Hi. Hi. Thank you for coming. I know you have a lot of things you could be doing. If I speak at this volume and this pace, is that going to be good for everybody?
Yes.
Good, because I hate it when you can't hear. Welcome to the walkthrough. Let me lay out a few of my parameters because I think it's fair that you understand a little about where I'm coming from in what I'm going to choose to talk about and what I'm going to say. I'm not going to necessarily speak about the winners. I'm going to speak about pieces that affect me, that I find value in, that I find move me in one way or another. And what I hope to do is two things. I would like you to recognize that the things I'm choosing are because they speak to me, but the way I'm going to speak about them is going to be to try to explain or educate you about some of the techniques and skills that I think have helped to make the painting work. Because I know that's what your interest is. How can I make my painting work? And these paintings in here are like a master class with the variety of ways to handle pastel. So you're going to hear me talking about a lot of different artistic concerns. Everything from composition to color to value to texture, all that kind of art verbiage. I'll be doing a fair amount of that. The second thing I'd be asking you to do is listen critically. Don't buy everything I say. Run it through your own filter or your own, forgive the expression, shit detector, so that you decide for yourself how you feel about the piece, and if you agree with or disagree with what I'm saying, or you understand it more than you did because I point something out. So that's what I mean by critically, okay? It's not like I'm some big authority. I believe that each of you are the final arbiter. You are the final authority of how you feel about a piece. Now, if my responses or my reactions are helpful to you, great. Then you didn't totally waste an hour. But I wanted you to understand those parameters. So before we go, does anyone have questions? Okay.
So tell me about your works. Are you abstract? Are you super realistic? What are you looking for? What do you do when you paint?
You got another hour?
Okay, 2 minutes or less.
Okay. I've been told, I'm going to tell you what I'm told and what I've seen written about me because I think that's helpful to me. I've been told that my work dances and trips around the edge of realism and abstraction. And I go, okay. Other people say, well, you're clearly an abstract painter. And I say, clearly I'm not. I'm working from photographs and I'm representing reality. Yes, I take liberties. Yes, I manipulate. I might put photos together. My emphasis is nature. I'm a landscape-based artist. I prefer close focus. My passions are water and rocks and foliage. They speak to me. They tell me about who I am and my connection to the earth and where I fit. I'm also interested in this is going to sound big, but I'm answering your question. I'm interested in the eternal underlying principles and truths that are lying there in the ephemeral surface.
Thank you.
I was challenged once to try to describe my work in 5 words. I throw that gauntlet down to you if you want to take it. After great pains, I came up with these 5 words, and they are finding everything in the specific. Kind of the way a bonsai tree embodies the whole forest. It's kind of like that in my mind. Wow, I did not expect to go there at the beginning of this. Thanks for the question. Anyone else have one before we start? Okay, let's talk about somebody else's work. And I'm going to start right here with a woman whose work I've admired for years, Lina Selta. And what I see is a person who really knows and understands where she lives. This is her environment. And she not only knows it, she loves it. And I can feel her love. I can feel her attachment. When I look at the subtleties in the stones, the beautiful cracks, and they are specific, yet they're also just sort of gestural. She hasn't gotten persnickety about it. And look at how she indicates depth with the layering of the horizontal areas, moving backwards. And yet she unites all 3 of them. It's not like they're separate. This is one contiguous sort of reality. And her color palette and the forms and just the beautiful, beautiful landscape. I'm a fan. And I think it's a very successful painting. And the next one I want to talk about is right behind it, so it's going to be hard for you to see. And this is by a newer friend, Sergey.
I'm going to move.
Okay. And maybe some of you have worked with Sergey this week, I don't know. The work of Sergey's that I've seen is quite diverse. I've seen very abstracted pieces, I've seen architectural pieces, but personally I think he particularly shines in his portrait work. Again, my initial response is I am moved by the painting because I sense reality, I sense honesty, and I sense a connection. There's a feeling that I get that she's a real person. Mm-hmm. She's not a generic face. And the way that Sergey has allowed her face to emerge from a variety of subtle neutrals and background colors that are quite close in their value, I think it's really evocative. And I think it helps focus our attention. That's a physical, technical skill, to have the focal point emerge so naturally and comfortably from its environment. It tells you what's important in this painting. There's no question. Nicely done. And right in the same corner, so again, hard to see, Michael Freeman's piece. Michael is an artist who excels at almost super realism. Mm-hmm. And yet, look at what he chose to paint. To me, Michael's piece goes way beyond his technical ability at rendering objects and making them look realistic. I mean, we all admire that, right? I mean, there's something to be said for, wow, that looks so real. And yet Michael's choice of compositions are always intriguing, and they tell a story. And this one is clearly quite complicated. And yet he has figured out a way to put all of these complicated elements together in a unified way that they're not fighting with each other. Once again, they are supporting the central facial image, the center of interest. And again, if you look at the variety of values, he has used his darks quite judiciously up at the top, and the rest of these values and colors are quite similar. So oddly enough, I think there's similarity to these two pieces. So I'm going to say kudos to the people who hung the show. Because that's not an accident when that happens in a show. That's very, very nicely done. Okay, now we're going to move to the one here in the center. This is Clint Howard. And yeah, it got an award. Not a big surprise, right? As someone who bases their work in landscape, as I do, I'm a pretty harsh critic of landscapes, because that's also where I live. And it isn't just that I want people to paint like I do, because Lord knows I don't, but it makes me really appreciate a great landscape. I personally love this composition. It's a layered horizontals, but look at the subtle variety of widths, of size, of value, of subtle changes in shape and color. Look at how, look at how the various values support the story. Look at how you can't not look there. He's controlling you. He knows what he's doing. And look at the proportion of sky to land, to foliage, to ground. Those proportions are critical to the success of the piece, I think. And I think they're expertly done in this piece, even though the color palette is fairly close. So again, a beautiful piece. So now we're going to go into that corner. See, this is a very rich little spot we're in here. This is Tom Christopher. And I have to say that this is closer to my personal pastel handling. Because don't you see, as you walk through here, there are people who use the pastel so smoothly and refined, and then there's people who are rough and everything in between. And in this one, I'm going to stand over here, maybe that's easier. In this one, the rough texture is working for him, and clearly he has brushed or created a very rough surface that is not uniform. And then he has skillfully applied the pastel in such a way, like down here and up here, the way he's applied the pastel, it sits on the surface of those textural areas. And yet somehow magically it also tells the story of the grasses and the reeds and the snow. And I just think it's luscious. And again, I love the colors. But this is a case where I wanted you to appreciate the technical skill that it took to tell a story so freshly and loosely, but with intention. This is a case where I believe he knew what he was doing. It didn't just happen. That's skill, and it's skill used with purpose. And again, I find it a lovely, successful piece. So now we're going to go across, and I want to be sure which section it's in. Yep, it's over here. This is David Decobert. And I almost feel like I don't have to say very much. Because anybody who looks at this can go, wow, without trouble at all. I mean, that kind of mastery of composition, form, color, modeling, three-dimensional reality. And also, there's the trompe-l'oeil thing going on, but there's also the mystery of it. What's with the tape in the corner, and the ripped edge, and the drip of water coming through the middle of the paper? I mean, doesn't it just make you wonder, what's going on? What's the story? And those subtle grays and the subtle gradations in the color, masterful handling of pastel. Very contrasted in style to the last one we saw. That's what I mean. This show is like a master class. If you want to see what can be done with pastel, just walk around this room for a few hours, and you'll get a pretty good variety. Yes.
Forgot the ladybug.
I forgot the ladybug. Thank you. There's a ladybug.
Supposedly the one live thing.
Good point. See how it's speaking to Tatiana? I mean, she's engaged in what's the story, what's going on here. I think that's very cool. Thank you.
At first I thought it was in a berry, edge of a berry.
Okay, and for those who are watching by video, if you look very closely there's a ladybug.
It's the reverse side. She's right. It's the reverse shape of the bowl.
So ladybug is.
And it's a curved half circle. Exactly. And look where it's positioned. Talk about composition. Couldn't put it anywhere else.
It's got water.
And let me encourage others, if you have questions along the way or comments like that, please feel free. Okay, we're going back across the aisle to the next little room here. Another favorite artist of mine is Margaret Larelham. I don't know if I say her name well. I was delighted to see that it was recognized with an award because, again, Margaret is someone whose work I admire greatly. And I just think this piece works on just about every note. If I look at it technically and academically, I say to myself, look at those shapes, look at the subtle colors, look at the variety of mark making, look at the layering for the values, look at how close those are and yet how rich they are. Look at how that green around the dog's head is that beautiful negative edge to the dog. But we can also look at it as a story. She's captured the dog's life. This dog is sitting there, waiting, watching. You can almost feel the muscles in the dog's body as he juts his head forward, going, "Are you there yet? Are you there yet?" But it's not saccharine. How do you do all those colors in the dog's white fur without it getting cotton candy saccharine? But she does. I just think it's this is a master show, and we're seeing it. Next to it is another piece I wanted to call your attention to. This is by Mary Reinderl Smith. And it even has a similar color palette to Margaret's, which again, great hanging of the show. And what I love about this is the simple directness of the subject matter. Two crows, possibly ravens, sitting on some rocks. I don't know if that sounds like the subject fit for a painting, but but Mary has made it. The way she uses extremely abstract painting in the rocks, and then just enough reality and realism on the birds to tell the story, and the way the coloration in the rocks is supported by the sky, and the sky supports the colors in the rocks, without being literal. I think this is a very poetic piece, and I think that's what I responded to the most. I have a thing about ravens too, so I don't know if I'd like to think they're ravens. They could be crows. Crows are cool too. But I find it a poetic piece. It seems to me that it is almost metaphoric, and it gives me space to imagine, just to imagine what's going on and be in that energy. Next is Across the Hall. What I'd like to do here is talk about two different landscapes that are in this section. This first one is by Deborah Breeden, and one could say it's a fairly traditional landscape. You know, it has a beautiful sky, it has a horizon, it has trees and foliage coming towards you, but I wanted you to appreciate once again the complexity of what could be a boring, simple scene. How many times have you been outside and you saw a bunch of green trees and shrubs against a sky? Did you say, wow, I gotta paint that, that's so interesting? The subject is not all that interesting, but the painting is. And that brings me to one of the other points I enjoy in analyzing or talking about paintings is, I'm looking to see the artist. I want to connect with the energy, the spirit, the vision that the artist brought to the work. And when you have this kind of an almost nothing subject matter done so beautifully, all about the different mark making, the variety of tones, the direction, the energy of it, I'm seeing Deborah, and I'm seeing the world as she has brought her beautiful energy to the scene. So I wanted to talk about that a little. And then let me contrast it, or just show another variety of a way to treat a landscape with this piece by Eve Miller. In some ways you can see it's similar to the piece Across the Hall, where we talked about these horizontal layers that are moving up through the space. But what a different energy this is. There's such a mood to this piece. And everything in it is soft. I think it takes a great deal of skill to put that much softness into an entire composition without it turning to mush. But it does not turn to mush. There's enough textural energy, there's layering, there's our focal point, the sunset, with just enough specificity to tell the story. It creates a mood, it gives us energy of a certain specific kind. There's another way that people treat landscape. Many landscape artists are trying to capture a moment. This experience, this light, this sunset in this place. And I think that that's something Eve has done very well. Now, a different kind of landscape is an urban one. So I want to talk about Andrew McDermott's piece here, this nighttime cityscape. This is something that Andrew is known for and obviously knows what he's doing. First of all, it's a real challenge, I think, to paint this time of day or night, that half light, because when we're experiencing it, we often just perceive it to be that everything gets dull. You know, colors fade, everything goes a little bluish, everything is dim, it's hard to see things. But Andrew takes that idea and makes this beautiful color story about it. So that's another way that those of us who create work from what we see visually, you know, some people work out of their head, some people work from, you know, a story or some other inspiration, maybe the meal they had for lunch. But those of us who work from our visual cues in the world, another, how shall I say, category almost of landscape painting are colorists. And I would say this piece of Andrew's kind of verges into that, because it's a story of happy, dancing colors. I will also point out that this sort of thing only works if you know how to use your composition well. Look at how he moves your eye up, around, back and forth, that white diagonal, the streaks of the headlamps. He doesn't let you run off the top by actually having a horizon that keeps you in the space. All of that, again, only happens with skill. Any questions or comments so far? You're not falling asleep yet either. That's good. Okay, we're going to stop here with another kind of landscape approach with Natasha Eisenhower, clearly a New Mexico artist who excels at an atmospheric, again, poetic, but very specific kind of landscape. This is not in New York. This is not in Kansas. This is not in Washington State. This is a specific environment that she loves and that she is masterful in telling the story of. Did she find this exact building in this exact place? I don't know. I give her credit because I've seen some of her other work where it's almost surrealistic. There's one of hers that's a favorite of mine. She has a building, and then there's literally a giant orange sitting on the desert next to the building, and it's bigger than the building. And you go, whoa, Natasha, where'd you go there? You know, but her palette is specific. She knows this environment. Her forms are clear. The composition is completely abstract. You can see that, can't you? The arrangement of straight lines, slight diagonals, the lights and darks. I mean, look at the position just of these windows in this slightly not perfect rectangle. How interesting is it that the rectangle isn't perfect? And then she's got these jet trails or whatever they are up in the top where you kind of go, more to the story. So anyway, another piece I think has a lot to teach us, not only about composition and pastel handling, but also storytelling and ways to approach what you see and what moves you. We're going to turn right back here to B.F. Reed's. So now we've moved from landscape into still life, sort of another category of painting. And B.F. works stripes and fabric like very few people. This is something she excels at. In this particular piece, one of the things that attracts me the most is not just the arrangement. I mean, think about putting that arrangement together. Because with a still life, the actual composition of the objects is a huge part of the artwork. It's not what you found outside. You made this up. So it's a very intentional, conscious part of the story. So she's using these objects to create this environment, to create, you could almost call it an invented landscape. That's kind of how I sometimes see still life. And the objects relate to each other. They relate to each other not only in their objectness, sugar bowl, glasses, lemons, tea, teacups, you know, they relate to each other. And then that fabric that holds it all together. But what also is an important relational element of this painting is the neutrality of the colors. Look how she uses tints and tones and shades of gray with peach in the white. Isn't that peach in the white amazing? And uses that, again, also the dark gray, but uses all of that to set off the yellow lemons. And just in case you thought you had it all figured out, we have some sky down here. So there's even a little surreal element. It's probably just reflection, but you say to yourself, is this outside? I think of it as telling an interior story about BF. But I just do admire the way she handles fabric. I mean, my goodness, isn't that wonderful? So we shall continue up here. This piece by Deb Stewart is clearly what the art world and artists would categorize as an abstract painting. I have to stop for a minute and say that since I get accused of being an abstract painter, and I don't think I really am, although sometimes I play with that, I work from photographs. I just take weird abstract photographs a lot of the time. Many of the pieces that people tell me are abstractions, if I'm close enough to them, I pull out the photo and go, oh yeah? Unretouched photo, but it's complete abstraction. And in reality, every single piece of art is an abstraction, because it's not reality. It's flat. But Deb has a particular vocabulary. And I think this is something that's important when we talk about abstractions. If you're not basing your imagery on visual reality, what are you basing it on? And how do you decide if it's successful or not? I think that's a real challenge. And for my read on it, the challenge of working not from visual input is that you've taken away one of the easy criteria of whether it's any good. So that means people who work like Deb have to have their own internal guidelines that tell them this is the amount of yellow it needs. Here's where the purple needs to go. Here I'm going to blend it. Here I'm going to leave my marks showing. And it's a constant interaction with the surface of the painting, informing what she needs to do as she creates it. And I think that's something that's very strong in this piece. And it's also just dang attractive. You know, what's wrong with that? I think there's nothing wrong with paintings appealing to us. Why else do you want to look at it? So with that little discussion of abstraction in mind, Once again, my compliments to who hung the show, but I want to call your attention to Kelly Malukas' piece. Also an abstraction. Not even that different a color palette. A different aspect ratio. It's a different energy. You have this large square. Here we have a rectangle. But look at Kelly's is more about forms and shapes rather than the kinesthetic energy of the mark making on this. So Kelly's forms are interacting with each other. So what I want you to think about when you look at abstractions like these two, which again I think are both very successful, how do you respond? Do you find the arrangement pleasing? Do you find that it is interesting? Do you find that it's not boring? Do you find that it challenges you or gives you associations? So when I look at this, I think those are really interesting shapes. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all they need to be, is interesting shapes. But look at the variety of color and texture. So there's a great deal of complexity. It's not, I get a little irritated with people who misunderstand abstraction in that they think, oh, if I just draw it scribbly, it'll be an abstraction. Or if I just simplify it and don't put any details in, it'll be abstracted. Not so much. You know, there can be a great deal of detail. There can be a great deal of thought. There can be a great deal of skill involved in making an abstract painting that is as engaging and as interesting as that. You guys have any thoughts about abstraction and what I'm saying? Because that's a big topic that I would go into further, but not today. You know, then let's move on. We're going to go across the hall to another still life. I'm doing okay? Okay, this one's by Sarah Blumenshine, another New Mexico artist. Something I know about Sarah that you may not know is she used to be an engineer. And every time I look at her work, I can kind of tell. She brings who she is to her work. Sarah's work, again, I could go on and on like I did about BF's, about the arrangement, the choice of objects, the lighting, the composition, the interrelatedness of the objects. It's all here, like in any still life. What always stands out to me about Sarah's, and is very much in this piece, Sarah brings a clarity to her forms and even her coloration. There's a kind of calm conviction, as I feel it, to every object, every peach or apple or plum, whatever they are, I don't care. But each orb, let's call them orbs, each orb is convincingly round and convincingly colored and delicious looking. When I look at the silver, even the forms in that are not just indicated or imagined, they're kind of specific and sort of contained. Can you see how each object in this painting is kind of contained? Almost as if she's outlining it. She's not, but it has that solidity. And it's something I think that gives her paintings a kind of gravitas that says, you know, this is important. So when I look at this painting, I think it's kind of important. And that's interesting to me. So well done, Sarah, I think. We're going to go across the way, and it's going to be a hard one to see because it's small and it's way in the corner. How are we doing time-wise? I could speed up. Okay, this is by Casey Klon. And to me, this piece is like a little gem. You know, there's big giant sculptures that are impressive and beautiful, and then there's a tiny piece of jewelry that's just as beautiful. And that's how this piece speaks to me. Casey is what I would call a colorist. I think you can see why. I have also had the pleasure of watching Casey demonstrate here at IAPS some years ago. And he was really challenged to find words sometimes for what he does, as we all are. I find it easier to talk about other people's work than mine. That's why this is fun for me. Casey tried to explain that as he's approaching the painting, how did he put it? It was something like he tried to forget that he knew how to paint. And he kind of went, huh? But I think I got what he was saying. He wants to be in the present. He wants to paint what that needs right now from him, such that it's a very dynamic process. And look at the coloration, look at the intuitive forms and the intuitive use of color. I think it's amazing. I think it's something that he excels at. Okay, here we go. We're going to go to a very different piece, the two lovely ladies in this one. This is by Eileen Geinger Stanfield, and I don't know Eileen. In some ways, this is a very conventional, almost romantic piece, isn't it? Two lovely women in beautiful white dresses and hats on a sunny day. I mean, the subject could be saccharine, but it's not, because of the skill involved in the rendering and the handling of light on the white surfaces. I'm not going to say it's John Singer Sargent, but it is. It has some of that touch of recognition that white is probably the most amazing surface to paint that there is. And there's a story here too. They're in front of what might be kind of an old building. They're both looking towards something. There's a rhythm to this. The two, it's kind of like watching the difference between a ballet dancer on the stage and two ballet dancers on the stage who are in unison. There's this lovely duplicated energy that makes the total more than the sum of the two parts. And I think the rhythm and the connection in it and just the beautiful coloration is quite attractive.
Those strong white edges are very reminiscent of Sarah's painting.
Yes, they are. Thank you. This lady commented was that she notices the very strong white highlighted edges are also very similar to what Sarah Blumenschein does in her forms. It accentuates the form and it gives the painting, that is something that working in pastel is especially good at. Those little pops of highlight at the end so that the painting has that wow factor. And thank you for bringing that out because that does add to the wow factor.
I love that light hand, the light on the hand.
Thank you. The comment is noticing and liking the light on the hand. Once again, the artist is pushing your eyes around, telling you where to look. That's what good artists do. Thanks for remembering to point that out. Okay, we're going to go down the way a little bit. We can't do everything. I'm sorry. We're going to look at this guy around the corner by Greg Sanford. I'm going to speed up a little. The first thing I noticed when I looked at this piece was that it's on a stretched canvas. So let's just take a moment and enjoy that. You know, here's another way to use pastel. And it's clearly on a bright phthalo green underpainting. And that's similar to how I work. Up in the sky, it's a different color underpainting. And the way the pastel is applied almost looks like oil or acrylic paint dragged with a brush. And I think for this piece and the variety of colors and the shapes, I just think that's fabulous. So here's a reminder that if you can figure out a way to use pastel, well then do it. You know, there are kind of rules and guidelines, but if you can make it work, I don't know if any of you know the work of Fred Summers. He liquefies some of his pastels and pours it on. Probably because nobody told him he couldn't. So if you're using pastels, see what else you can make them do, perhaps. Okay, gotta move along. We're going to take one moment here rather quickly with Alexandra's Saronics. I mostly want to call your attention to the mark making. This painting is clearly mostly linear. But doing that much linear can turn out to be a mess. And instead, this tells the story of the water and the movement and the reflections. And if you actually stood here and analyzed how many different colors are in there, and how some of the lines are stronger, some are lighter, the application of the pastel weight makes a big difference, or the density of the line. If you want to study good linear work, this is a good one to look at. And we're going to go look at the rocks across the way. For those of you who like to paint rocks like I do. Here's another case. This is by Pamela Barcita. She's made much of nothing. How many of you have walked past little stones like this piled around or whatever? Now did Pamela actually arrange them? I don't know. But in the end, she's created a very beautiful composition. It has rhythm, it has harmony, it has movement. What I think is particularly good is the use of size. If everything in your painting is the same size, it flattens it out and makes it boring. This is a fabulous example of scale. Look at the different sizes. Look at how the little ones accent or support or emphasize the larger ones and vice versa. There's a whole, you could study this pretty deeply to think about the size of the forms in your painting. Okay, I need to move along. The winter light in this, Valeria Kulikova. Oh my goodness, it's almost 2 o'clock. Okay. I don't think I need to say too much about why this is so fabulous. Look at that light, look at the convincing atmospherics, the beautiful close-up forms of the snow, the accuracy of the toning on the snow, the looseness of how the light is actually dissolving the tree branches. Because that's how it does, doesn't it? When the light comes through, you don't see every branch, it just kind of blurs it out. This is somebody who really knew and understood this subject matter and captured it beautifully. across the way. There's a little green one here. In fact, it's called Green Space by Marilee Kosterman. An interior landscape. That's another version of landscape, as you go inside architectural spaces and you take advantage of the straight lines and the perspective. So in this case, Marilee has beautifully controlled the composition through use of angles and atmospheric perspective. The light shining in little bits, like here on the edge, this diagonal, with these interesting darks, and yet it's all in a pretty close, interesting green palette. The use in this one of final black linear elements to define some of the forms, I think, is very, very beautifully done. That's something I'm a fan of. I like to see solid forms. I like to see crisp edges. I like to see lost edges. I like to see blended areas, scumbled areas, and in this case, these beautiful detail line elements at the end. Very nicely done. Okay, there's a floral here I want to call your attention to. This is by Nancy Ness, and I think it lives in the world between realism and abstraction that I like to live in. We know it's a vase of flowers, right? There's enough representationalism that we can identify with it, and yet clearly it's not just a vase of flowers. This is an abstract composition. It's about the forms, the relationships, the energies. I love the way primarily the artist has divided the space into 3 strips. And then when the elements cross those strips, look what happens. In the center, you have these bright oranges, soft mauves of a lighter value set off by the darker purple background. When you come over here and you have that lighter background, the floral elements are slightly darker, but they're not so dark that they jump away from the background. They're still sort of integrated into the background. And I don't even know quite what to say about that side. It just works. It's kind of both. It's kind of all mixed up. And then if that isn't enough, I could drool over that green and that weird shape. I love that shape. So I think this is a beautiful composition and a beautiful use, a skillful use of color. Okay, just a couple more. Going across the way here to this award winner. Again, I'm not sure I need to say very much about the skill of this treatment of a landscape. It's clearly stylized, it's gestural, but look at the rhythm and the harmony, and just in a piece like this, I would encourage you to just let your eyes float where they want to go. See where they move you. He has so skillfully choreographed the colors and the sizes and shapes that you get to just wander the whole surface and move around back and forth and enjoy the whole thing. Another kind of stylized landscape is right next to it. Very different. This one, the forms are very roughly articulated. There isn't a lot of detail. It's about the contrast between the blue and the orange. But again, great hanging of the show, this sense of rhythm, this sense of skillful use of pattern, repeated forms, but they're not identical, so they're not boring. Like I talked about the different sizes on the rocks, if you look at these forms, there is such different subtle varieties of size and shape and position that it's very interesting. And it's another kind of painting that I encourage you to just gaze and let your eyes go where they want to go, because the artist is going to take you on a fun trip. 2 more. A piece here in the corner, Pam Comfort. I have a connection to Pam, I admit it, so I get what she's doing here. And it speaks to things that I love too. You know, a close-up of water with rhythm. And as I was talking about the rhythm and the pattern in those two, she has created a whole different kind of rhythm and pattern. It's more closely accurate or realistic in that sense, and yet the way she's handled the paint, it's completely abstract as well. That's where I like to live. And it thrills me that, you know, that Pam likes to live there too. Beautiful coloration, beautiful piece. And the last one I want to talk about is right behind me. I shouldn't have moved on. By Jane Romanishko. I am not a portrait painter. So in the way I told you that I'm kind of tough on landscapes because that's what I do, when I see beautiful portraits, I am gobsmacked because I can't do that. And yet I've seen a lot of them that have fallen into very nice, you know? But this one stands out for its emotional impact, for the treatment of the background being subtle and yet really important. The way her whole self emerges from this background, her expression, the light, the loose handling of the pastel, the subtle colors. Obviously a winner, and a piece I'm very impressed by. So that's my walkthrough. I hope that some of the themes I addressed are useful to you in terms of when you're looking at a painting, perhaps you have some ideas of how to figure out they did what they're doing to you, because they are doing things to you. And also ideas about how you judge, what you value, and what you think is good in a painting. So if there are any questions, we still have time if you want.
I have a question about that one right there.
Yes?
Something about it, maybe it's the composition, but I love it. But there is one thing that bothers me,
Okay, show us.
and that's in the very bottom left corner. That's the only place that I can see from here that isn't. I guess there's more of it on the bottom that isn't colored, but.
Okay, what's happening is you're saying that it's clear to you that they didn't bring the pastel down,
Yeah.
that that's the paper showing, and it is a little bit there, and that's bothering you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, the other corner is a little.
Not that much.
The other corner has a teeny bit. The top two
I think it
don't.
depends how intentional it looks.
Say it again.
I think it depends how intentional it looks.
Yeah, if it's intentional.
So the question is it intentional, or is it kind of a little error that they didn't finish it in, or that the framing didn't crop it?
On this
don't
level,
know.
it
I
would
feel
have
like
to
it
be
needs that
intentional.
light.
I think.
Okay, the comment is made that if you're at this level, it better be intentional. And we would hope
And
so.
we're
Yeah.
talking about it a lot, right?
But it's an interesting there's
And
a
the fact that we're
balance.
talking about it.
There's a balance
Right, I
that's
think it
happening
needs that
between
light
the bright
part
yellow
there.
and the little bit of gray down below. I mean, I think
Oh, look at
without
this.
that, you'd miss it.
This comment is that that sort of triangular shape of pale violet, or gray, whatever the paper color is important, you felt, to the triangular shape of yellow, that there's an energetic balancing.
Because it seems like everything else is so intentional.
Defined.
You know,
Like balance.
it does.
The balance could have been
Yeah,
done.
and balance.
Is that
That's a lighter
cushion on
chair.
a chair behind her?
Well, clearly, we don't know, but clearly we're kind of engaged and wondering and challenged by it, and that's exciting. I'll tell you what I see is this
Oh,
Yeah.
on her back, this little triangle, and a little bit on her face, maybe because it's almost the same color and value. I don't know.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
I think it's intentional because, as you say, if you're entering a piece in this IAPS show and you accidentally leave that, that doesn't speak well.
I guess the question more would be, if it's intentional, is it working?
There you go.
Yeah.
A different question. Is it working? And I think we are best off to each make up our own mind and maybe even talk to the artist if they're here. That's something else you can do
I
here.
love the painting, absolutely love
It's
it.
It's a-
clever paint. It's a very well done painting.
It's a very well done painting. Like I said, I wish I could have talked about all of them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colette.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.